How do you feel about the quality of storytelling that you're seeing in the world today?
I mean, it's a good question. How do I feel about the quality of storytelling? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not really attracted to a lot of new stuff. I think because I've seen it before. And that's just my personal thing. At this point, I think it's just an age thing. And also it's a result of being a film nerd, because when you consume as much cinema as I have in my lifetime, you have seen, in most cases, the best iterations of a particular story or genre already. So when I see something new that just manages to be good execution or a well-executed version of a story that I've already seen, it's not enough for me anymore. So I don't, I find myself going back to the films that really changed my life, that really did it best, because I want to be nourished in that way. It's not enough for me to see something that's just a really good yarn that was well directed and well produced, even though that's a monumental feat. Any filmmaker will tell you, that making a good movie is a miracle. But for me personally, I tend to look to the past for the inspiration, because I feel like in most cases it was done best. And that doesn't mean that I'm resistant to somebody showing me something that's truly brilliant, because I would welcome that. If somebody showed me something that was just earth-shatteringly brilliant, better than anything else, then I would be like, Jesus Christ, thank you. I want to see that stuff. And I'm sure it's out there. I just haven't seen anything lately.
I know, like The Handmaid's Tale, it was a movie with Elizabeth McGovern. Was it in the 80s, I think? Or early 90s, maybe?
Yeah, you mean the original Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah. And so now it's like got a whole new life to it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And now they're spoofing it on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And
Right.
But back then, I don't remember if I really heard a lot about it.
No, it's funny. I think it was in the 80s. I was actually an intern at the production company where they were making that movie.
Really?
I remember Xeroxing and fucking up the Xeroxes. I think it was, I forget who was the director of the original Handmaid's Tale. I can't believe I'm blanking on this. German director. But anyway, it was in New York City. I was like, a PA in the office.
How cool.
And they were having this special lunch meeting or something, and I was charged with getting the new draft together. And I was like, printing this thing out, and it was jammed in the print. I ran over to 21 or wherever they were having dinner, and I remember giving it to the producer, and it was like all the pages were out of order and everything. He's looking at me judgmentally, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm never going to work in this business again. Yeah, well, a good story, a good story that a filmmaker or a writer finds a way in that changes it or makes it more contemporary or more resonant or personal, whatever it is. I think that's totally valid too. But I just haven't seen much recently that's like blown me away.
Right. It's kind of like, a band that does, When the Levee Breaks or something. And It's like, okay, it sounded so great when Robert Plant sang it, but now you're doing it and it sounds good, but it just doesn't have the same appeal.
Right.
But again, is it a generational thing? Because I know you and I were just talking off camera about video discs and just seeing older, like even 90s films, that it just had a different feel to it.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I talk to my students about this all the time. I think it's an amazing age and it's a horrible age. It's amazing in the sense that anything you want to see from the history of the world is available, like that. Like, gone are the days of hunting for a revival house that's going to be showing The Third Man or Seven Samurai or what have you, or anything for that matter, or The Last Detail or whatever it is. It's not like you have to hunt for a video store, not that they exist anymore, that's going to carry a special John Woo Hong Kong action thing that when they can't find. Everything is available at any given moment. That said, there is so much material, there's so much available that I wouldn't know where to begin. And I think that that's a problem, because unless there's somebody, a teacher or film geek parent or somebody saying, spend your time watching this, and this before you watch this other stuff, because that's going to educate you. That's going to make you a better filmmaker. Then you're bound to lose those great things. And I'm not even talking about the obvious classics. I'm just talking about even minor films that are still better than a lot of junk that you see today. You're never going to see them. They're never going to see them, because there's just too much to look at. And so I'm sort of losing the thread of the question, but I think my feeling is that there's just almost too much to see now, and it'd be better if you, I don't know, if someone helped. It's almost like you need to graduate. You have to, there's a prerequisite. Like, you have to watch all this stuff if you're going to be a filmmaker, and then you can watch as much junk as you want that's out now, almost something like that.
Right, well, a lot of stuff seems over-processed, you know, like too overproduced in some ways. And maybe just as a culture, we've become used to that. So if it's not packaged that way, we don't want it.
I think you're right. I think we were talking about this earlier. I think that if social media is overproduced, in other words, if somebody's personal Instagram page with all its requisite filters and with this glamour and the tools of production in the hands of anybody, and it raises this level, this standard of what is acceptable to a professional level in a certain way, but it also creates a certain artifice. One of my favorite quotes that John Cassavetes said about Hollywood films in general is that they're an advertisement for life. That's what he said, because Hollywood movies, in most cases, are an advertisement for life. And he was saying, whereas my films, which are clearly comparatively very rough and perhaps even mistakenly looked upon as almost amateurish compared to that polish, and mistakenly because that was by design, by him, because he was a professional, but he made his films look a certain way because he was trying to get at something that was the opposite of that. He was trying to get at the messiness, the reality of life, whereas Hollywood almost by definition tries to minimize that in favor of this gloss or polish or illusion, And so, I think that becomes the diet that you're consuming. Then if you see something that's grittier or messier and I'm not even talking about the look, I'm talking about the content, where the content is not just this clearly safe, defined thing. People may have a resistance to that. They may go, whoa, this is not, I don't want this. This is too much. This is not what this is not the food I've chosen to eat. But what does it do to your tastes? It limits your taste to only want this candy and not something that's more sustenance, or what's the right word? Substantial in that way, It's nourishing.
Yeah. I was just watching part of the Stepford Wives.
Which one?
Oh, the
original?
First one, yeah, the original.
Yeah.
And just how, they're like the long driving sequence in the beginning with all the credits and the classic, was it 70s?
Yeah,
I think,
early 70s.
Track, at the time that we would hear all the time. And now it sounds so wonderful. But at the time, every show and movie had it.
That's right.
But, just how it was so quiet in terms of there's just moments where it's not like something's happening every second.
Right.
Breathing.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, and I've always said this, and anybody will tell you this, that the strength of a spike in a story or a movie where something goes crazy, where there's a lot of kinetic activity or surprise or whatever, is directly related to the quiet that precedes it. In other words, something is super loud or big relative to what preceded it. So that's why in a horror movie, then they learned this going all the way back to the 30s, but if you have a very quiet, almost nothing happening, and then a huge scare, that scare becomes magnified. Whereas if you have to maintain what is now, the classic Hollywood mantra of just a thrill every second, then that thrill every second becomes a plateau. You just become accustomed to it. It's not going to hit you the same way if you allowed for that quiet to precede it. But that assumes that the audience, or it probably assumes that the producers are willing to allow that quiet to happen and not be oh shit, people are going to be bored. We got to do something exciting, and you can't have this length of quiet. And that the audiences are willing to invest in that and be okay with that and say, this is not boring, this is interesting, and then be the beneficiary of the result of that if something huge follows it, because it'll be huger, because of it.